live to everywhere we need to go in the world. So at your call, we're ready.
Okay, I'm assuming I don't need to unmute myself on the computer.
You're good to go.
Get it off of that call. Get the info.
I do.
Is that maybe because I turned this on? Is it better now?
No.
Why don't you start and we'll see what we get.
I'm going to use Representative Stavis as my. Representative Stavis, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
There's an echo.
Okay. Let me try this. Is it better now?
No.
No, it's worse now.
Is there someone in the room with their computer audio on?
I can't shut mine off.
Yeah, John, you good?
Yeah.
Everybody else? We've got everything here. That is on.
It doesn't give you a mute option?
No, Jim doesn't have me as co-host. I can't.
Oh, let me do that.
Can you mute Tony?
All right, you are all set on YouTube, Representative Dolan. Did you want to just give us a quick check on, make sure the reverberation is gone?
Okay, test 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're still getting it.
Is there anybody in the room? Does Representative Piemonte, is he there? Does he have his?
I'm here. I can't turn off my microphone at all.
Can you mute him, Jim?
What I'm trying to do, yeah.
I don't see him online.
On here, either as an attendee or as a panelist.
All right.
Are you in the right meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, Representative, let me get the recording started. My apologies.
I'll get it back in this.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still hearing an echo.
Me too.
I'm out completely.
It sounds like it's somebody in the room that has their audio on.
I'm on mute.
Is anybody not on mute?
We might need Scott to come in and help us.
I quit Zoom completely.
You can look at my screen.
That's it.
Not good. I don't want that.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4.
Representative Piemonte, can you sign off
I'm off.
for a moment? Oh, you are.
It's off.
Is there anybody else online in the room that isn't on the?
I'm online, but I'm muted.
I'm online, but I'm muted, and I'm muted.
All right, let me just see if I can get someone down there to take a look.
Was that Jim? Did you have to do something on that?
I did. I had to unmute that so that we could roll, and that's done.
Test 1, 2, 3. I didn't get an echo that time.
Yeah, you did. I can hear it.
I did request that someone from IT come down. It's not horrible. I don't know if you want to get started and we'll have someone come down in a minute. It's up to you folks in the room because I think it's the worst for you.
All right, well, let me do this chairman's script and we'll do the pledge. And we'll get that out of the way. I'll talk softly to try not to have an echo. Well, good morning. This is the Municipal and County Government Committee. As chair, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public hearing on bills referred to the committee. An executive session may follow. Please note there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available on the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting notice complies with House rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing this meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@leg.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Christina Dyer is the staff assisting us. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there's anybody in the room with you if you're communicating through Zoom or with a telephone, which is required under the right to know law. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Dolan?
Here.
Representative Piamonte? Here. Representative McDonald is here. Representative Tripp?
Present.
Representative Guthrie?
Here.
Representative LaSalle? Representative LaSalle? Representative McBride?
Here.
Representative Melvin? Here. Representative Ayer?
Yeah.
Representative Power?
Here, I'm present at my residence in Brookline. I'm the only one in the room. However, there are 2 family members in other parts of the house.
Representative Porter?
I'm here. I'm alone in my office right now, but my husband will be coming in and out.
Representative Trey Levy?
I'm here in Dover, New Hampshire. The cat may walk by, although she's been banned.
Representative Gilman?
I am present in my home in Exeter, and my husband is also wandering about the house.
Representative Majori?
I am here. Oops. I'm here.
Representative Davis?
Present and alone.
Representative Mangaputi?
I'm here in my home alone.
Representative Van?
I am here at my house in Peterborough. I'm alone in the room that I'm in, but there are 2 family members in other parts of the house.
Representative Clee?
I am here. I am currently alone. My husband is in the house, but with headphones on. He cannot hear any of the proceedings.
Thank you. Representative Gallagher?
I'm here in my apartment in Concord and I am alone.
Okay, how about Representative LaSalle?
Mr. Clerk, I see.
I'm here in Litchfield. I'm alone in the room.
130 some odd billion dollars that were written to that legislation.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. For those both in the LOB and at home, I would ask that you mute your telephone if you have your phone with you. And I'm sorry for the sound issues we're having. We have an IT specialist on the way to help. So please, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, on our agenda today, we have 7 bills to hear. We'll take a lunch break, and we'll go into executive session this afternoon, which the public can observe. So first up today, we're going to start with House Bill 79, which is relative to town health officers. Now, I don't have anybody scheduled to speak to this bill.
Chairman, I do recognize that I believe it's Representative Marsh has his hand up, and I have allowed him to speak, and I do believe that he is the prime sponsor of the bill.
Great, okay, thank you. Representative Marsh, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. Can you hear me?
We can.
Very good. I'll also note that I believe someone from DHHS has signed up to speak, although he may not appear on your list. But for the record, I'm Representative William Marsh, representing 7 towns in Southern Carroll County. Relevant to this bill, I've been the health officer of the town of Brookfield since 2002. And I'm pleased today to offer you this bill, House Bill 79, relative to town health officers. This bill began as a request of the New Hampshire Health Officers Association. We worked on it over the summer, and I want to especially thank the town of Tamworth and their selectman and health officer, Becky Mason, who hosted a meeting last summer to work on the bill. My top priority for this legislative session is strengthening the public health system in New Hampshire, and this bill is a key piece of that effort. Let me walk you through the bill and hit the highlights.
Representative Marsh?
Yes.
Hold for a minute, please. We have a member from IT here to help us with our sound issues.
I will wait until you're ready. How are you? Yeah. That mic needs to be on. Yep. So you're going to be using that in the microphone.
For those that are observing, please be patient. We are working on some sound issues. A member of the committee that's in another meeting. Testing. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Your microphone on? It's on. Okay. Yeah. My video on? Your video, yes. Okay, test 1, 2, 3. Is that better?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
No problem, guys. Sorry to interrupt. Representative Marsh, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for correcting the problem. It sounds much better on my end. I will continue walking you through the bill. Section 1 updates the appointment of health officers and requires that health officers provide contact information to DHHS. Section 2 removes the current requirement that a health officer be a state resident. This is a request of several towns, and this requirement's been waived several times in the recent past. Section 3 requires local boards of health to meet at least once a year and report to DHHS on their readiness to address public health threats. Draft templates are in development, and it's my understanding that Matt Callahan from DHHS will be here to share them with you today. Section 4 allows deputy health officers to continue to serve when the health officer position becomes vacant. Section 5 allows a single person to be the health officer for several towns. Section 6 adds training of health officers by DHHS, background checks, and rulemaking. Most importantly, regarding New Hampshire's readiness for the next pandemic, it's a requirement for the Health Officers Association to report to the HHS Oversight Committee and the State Health Assessment and State Health Improvement Plan Advisory Council. Section 7 gives health officers the new duty to communicate with the commissioner about noncompliance with quarantine and enforcement orders. It also gives health officers enforcement authority in the event of a public health emergency, the same enforcement authority extended to health officers by provision 5 of Emergency Order 65. I believe these provisions need to be in statute to enable lifting the current state of emergency. Section 8 allows data sharing between health officers and DHHS, thereby enabling health officers to inform local officials when actions are advisable to protect the public. In my town, this would have been extremely helpful when we had a sudden outbreak of COVID shortly after the November election. This is necessary to make our public health system into a true system where local officials can work together with state officials. Section 9 requires DES to provide a copy of notices closing pools to local health officers, a request of the Littleton health officer. The contact information in Section 1 will allow this to happen without burdening DES. I thank you for consideration. I will be glad to take questions.
Are there any questions from those on the committee? If you would like to raise your hand electronically, you can do that. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *6.
Mr. Chair, it looks like the first hand raised was from Representative Porter.
Okay, Representative Porter, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Marsh, for presenting the bill. I only have one question. The bill authorizes the health officer to appoint a deputy health officer. The bill also talks about the health officer requiring training, but it doesn't mention whether the deputy health officer also requires that training, and I'm wondering if that was your intention.
Thank you, Representative Porter. I appreciate that it might be appropriate for deputy health officers to have training. We put in a requirement for health officers to have training, which is a new requirement. We didn't want to overreach. Certainly, it would be reasonable for the deputy health officers to have that training, as frequently deputy health officers become health officers, but we figured this was one step at a time.
Thank you.
Representative Marsh, do you have your testimony in writing that we could get a hold of?
I will be glad to email it to the committee.
Thank you. And next we have Representative Anjapudi has her hand up.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Marsh. My question to you is, having these changes existed, had these changes existed in the books, would our approach to pandemic COVID-19 would be helpful?
The short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is more complicated. As you know, I've served on the governor's economic reopening task force. We had quite some debate over the summer as to whether health officers should have enforcement authority or not. And at the beginning of the summer, at least, health officers were in the position where they could persuade and educate, which was really the appropriate first step. But if enforcement was needed, someone else had to be called in. And the initial idea was to call in the Liquor Commission. By the end of the summer, it was decided that the governor needed to give enforcement authority to health officers, and he did so by emergency order. I believe the process would have been smoother had we done that from the very beginning. But as a fact of the matter, I think we have created our solution as we've gone along and done a pretty good job here in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Tripp, and then we'll go to Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a follow-up to Representative Porter's on the deputy health officer. What exactly is the deputy health officer's duties if it's not identical to the health officer?
The deputy health officer in towns that have one, I don't have one in my town, would be to assist the health officer in whatever way the health officer requests, just like the vice chair helps the chair in your committee. I think it may vary greatly between towns how that is divided up.
Follow-up?
So the follow-up, please. So the deputy health officer really has no defined duties or responsibilities.
That is correct. They do not have independent authority.
Well, thank you, Dan.
Next up, we have Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Marsh, for taking my question. I was just wondering if you see the health officer as an independent department without, as a department head without oversight from anyone but the select board or town manager administration?
Well, the way the law is established, the health officers are actually appointed by the Commissioner of Health and Human Services at the recommendation of the selectmen. So in that sense, the health officer reports to the commissioner, but the health officer, I won't say works, because in some towns, such as my town, the health officer is a volunteer, but the health officer certainly reports to the selectmen, perhaps not as frequently as they ought. We're trying to establish that happen more frequently as part of this bill by requiring annual meetings at least.
Thank you.
I see Representative Manjapudi's hand up. Is that, has it been lowered, or does she have another question?
No, sorry, that was a mistake. I roll over.
Representative Manjuri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Marsh, for taking my question. My question is with regard to the background check. I presume there will be some nominal fee that the town is going to have to incur for that background check. And that I'm just curious if that's true. I assume that is true. And do you recognize any problem if the if the Board of Selectmen is acting as the health officer? It's two separate questions. I apologize for that.
I'll answer the second one first. I know of a number of towns where a member of the Board of Selectmen acts as the health officer, and I'm not aware of any problems with that. As far as requiring a background check is concerned, it is my understanding that there is a nominal fee for that process to happen. However, I do believe that it is important that if we give enforcement authority to health officers, that they have a background check. Despite the fact that that was not a part of the emergency order that was put in place this summer.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Do we have a member of DHHS on the line that would like to speak?
I believe we do, Mr. Chair, and I believe I've allowed that person to speak.
Is it the member from DHHS? Could you just identify yourself and go ahead and speak? I'm not hearing anything. Maybe the person's on mute.
Is it Matthew? Whoops, there we go. You might not be able to hear me. There we go. I have allowed Matthew Kalane to speak. I'm not sure if that's a representative from DHHS.
Is Matthew Kalane on the line? Okay, Representative Marsh, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Did you know who from DHHS was going to speak to us?
It is my understanding that Matt Callahan is the person from DHHS who's been assigned to come speak to the committee this morning. So I think you have the correct person, and technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. I don't know what the problem was, but I apologize, and I'm ready to present my testimony.
Can you also present a written copy of that to our clerk?
Yes, I believe that's already been submitted, but if not, I will make sure that happens.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Dolan and the members of the Municipal and County Government Committee. My name is Matthew Kalane. I'm a program manager at the DHHS Division of Public Health Services. Over the past 4 years, I've managed the state program for the appointment, training, and technical support of local health officers. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to provide this testimony today on House Bill 79. DHHS has worked with Representative Marsh during the process of developing the language for this bill. We're supportive of the bill, and we believe the proposed changes will assist health officers in their charge of protecting local public health. Representative Marsh did an excellent job reviewing that. In section 1, he talked about many of the suggested changes, and the proposed legislation would affect RSA 128. Should be noted that these items apply to New Hampshire towns and not to cities. The bill will require local Board of Health to meet once per year to review public health threats and readiness to respond to them. This provision will allow the department to better understand the types of public health threats and readiness of New Hampshire communities. Public health threats can include communicable disease, sanitary conditions in housing, pest or rodent infestations, health nuisances in the form of waste, noise, or odors, and hoarding of possessions or animals. Another provision of the bill requires that health officers and deputy health officers share the same appointment officer term, and we believe this allows for more flexibility for municipalities to find and nominate them. We also believe that removing the residency requirement will allow communities more opportunity with recruitment and expand the pool of eligible persons. During the past year, COVID-19 response has provided many lessons on how to best address threats and manage the public health emergencies at the state and local level. DHHS has used the best available information to create a guidance that has both met public health standards and allowed flexibility for both business and the public sector. In an effort to inform local officials about COVID-19 guidelines, DHHS Health Officer Liaison Program released over 50 private listserv messages and directed 24 training webinars on the spread, prevention, and treatment of the disease. As we continue to work to reopen the economy, DHHS will rely heavily on local health officers to inform community members of the public about public health guidance, respond to complaints, and pursue compliance in collaboration with state agencies. As part of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, DHHS identified some areas for improvement and further collaboration with local health authorities. Some of the gaps identified included the need to improve communication, clarify local public health readiness, and support basic training for health officers. In conclusion, DHHS acknowledges that the changes included in the bill will provide greater flexibility for local government to nominate health officers, improve the ability of health officers to fulfill their duties under specific state laws. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony about how we can best support local communities to address sanitation and improve public health.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Yes, I see Representative Trelevin would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My mouse was not cooperating. And thank you, Matthew, how do you say your last name correctly?
Kay Helene.
Hey, Helene, thank you for coming and testifying. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that this covers towns, not cities. Can you tell me why?
Under RSA 128, the legislature set that up to apply to towns specifically, not to cities. So that's the reason we don't have the authority under 128 to cover cities. We obviously collaborate with them very well, but just doesn't cover that section.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Are there any members of the public that would like to ask a question?
I do not see any hands raised.
All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing.
Well, I do see a couple of hands have come up, but I'm not sure if they're for this meeting. Brian Lockhart.
Mr. Lockhart, would you like to make a comment?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, Brian Lockhart. I am the health officer from the town of Salem. I've been here since 2002. I am also the vice president of the New Hampshire Health Officers Association. And I just wanted to support Representative Marsh in that with their testimony. We worked together on this, and we really appreciate the support of Representative Marsh. And we do support this. They went over all the issues, but I just wanted to sort of emphasize a couple of them. Right now, there are no training requirements for health officers, and we think, this is kind of starting out with a basic 3-hour requirement. We think that's a great step in the right direction to make sure that we have a trained and competent, health officer in New Hampshire for each town. The communication, the disease reporting, I think is also very important, and that was very apparent during this pandemic. The health officers are very involved with a variety of issues. And I know one of the representatives asked, would this have helped having these new requirements? And it sure would. We're responsible for providing information to our residents. We're involved in trying to deal with isolation and quarantine requirements. However, health officers are not notified of any COVID positive cases. That information is not shared with the local health officers. So we get questions, we get calls from businesses asking how do they respond, how do they deal with a positive employee for COVID. And we're doing the best we can. But I think the sharing of that information, that disease reporting, would help all of us to deal with this pandemic a little better. And we're partners with the state. We want to work with them, and I think that would help all of us. Thank you.
It's a very challenging.
Okay.
Representative Mangiapudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Matthew Calhoun. Did I say your last name right? Helene, right? Okay, Helene. Is there something similar existing for cities that had provided that platform during the pandemic?
You know, as you likely know, most of the cities in New Hampshire have independent health departments. Certainly Manchester and Nashua did a very good job of managing the tracking of COVID cases. And certainly all health officers and done a good job with the rollout of vaccine in their communities. But to clarify, the first part of this bill that covers RSA 128 covers towns and not cities. The second part for RSA 141 would cover towns and cities, allowing that information, sharing of information. And that the third part, which was I think for RSA 45 for the reporting of, yes, 45 for the regulation of pools and bathing places, I believe would cover both towns and cities. So it's a little different. It's different as the information goes out.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for those giving testimony?
Mr. Chair, Representative Klee has her hand raised, and we also have Nate Grace from NHMA who has his hand raised.
We'll let Representative Klee first.
Thank you very much. And my question may have already been answered through Representative Mangiapudi's question. I'm not quite sure how to word this. When it comes to the reporting, are we saying the DHHS would report to the local health officer, or in this particular case, or the city's Department of Health and Human Services? I guess I'm a little just confused as to who's reporting to the health officer.
And that question is for Mr. Callahan.
Yes, it
Very
is.
good.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Great. Am I unmuted yet?
Yeah, you're doing fine.
Great. Okay. Just sorry, I got distracted for a second. There are two requirements for assessing threats at the local level and the state level. It's not a reporting requirement as much as ability to share information between the two. So under section 3, town health officers, local secretary board of health, there, the local board of health for each town, I'm sorry, I'm reading from HB 79, shall meet at least once per year or as frequently as needed to review public health issues and concerns and provide information as requested to the Department of Health and Human Services on the readiness to address relevant public health threats. So we're trying to provide, or we'd like to provide flexibility here so the town can report as requested by us information on them. And you might be familiar with, you know, during summer times, there's often outbreaks of mosquito-borne illnesses, and that's one information where we want improved information sharing. And if there was, say, an outbreak or excessive bed bugs that were moving from dwellings to the library, which happens often, or to schools, we'd like to share that information and have the town understand how to manage that and how to understand the hazards they have. So that's kind of the first element, right? The local level reporting to and sharing information with the state level, DHHS, so we can better help them. Now there's a second part about a reporting requirement. So this says on HB 79, line 28, this is section 6, and I believe it's page 2, sorry. It says beginning November 1st, 2021, and annually, the New Hampshire Health Officer Association, in consultation with DHHS, shall report to the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on HHS, established under RSA 126, and the State Health Assessment and State Health Improvement Plan Advisory Council, regarding the readiness of municipal health officers to respond to potential public health threats in New Hampshire. So as Brian Lockhart was just saying, as a representative of the Health Officers Association, the idea would be they'd work with the HHS, gather information from the locals, right, which is now flowing up, and be able to report that to the legislature so they understand both the public health threats and the readiness of the local health departments to be able to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions from the public? Take one more, if there's one more question out there.
The last one, Mr. Chair, is from Nate Graves at NHMA.
Please go right ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. I thought I had signed up successfully on Friday, but I guess not to testify on this, as well as HB 332 and HB 404. In any case, we are in support of this bill. I won't reiterate the testimony that has already been given today. I think that was excellent. We agree with all of those points. The only thing I would add is that probably the number one health-related, pandemic-related issue that we've received questions about at NHMA have been that ability to communicate between the local health officers and the state. And there was a lot of frustration, especially over the summer, about how that was being done. And we think this bill would address those issues and assist local health officers and the state build a stronger relationship and have a better free flow of information that will help everyone. So we can get this pandemic under control as well as any other issues.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Graves? Yes, Representative Gilman.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Graves. This might actually be addressed by Mr. Cahaleen. My question was about the effective date and 60 days after passage. Are we grandfathering in the existing or current health officers, or they all have to go through training and background checks after this bill is passed?
I would defer to DHHS on how they would be applying that portion of the law.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 79. Next up is House Bill 88 relative to the City of Claremont Police Commission. I believe we have Representative Stapleton that would like to speak.
What's up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, my name is Walter Stapleton. I am the 3rd Ward representative from Claremont, Sullivan County, District 5. And I am a co-sponsor of this bill. This bill is, which is HB 88, is a housekeeping bill. And it basically changes one word in the bill to from appointing the police commission by the council of Claremont instead of the city manager. And this repairs some historical complexity relative to the town's history in this regard, going back to 1947, where the statute provided for the provision of appointment by the city manager prior to the city's charter. And there were 3 revisions over time in 1963 and 1971 and 1973, where various parts of the law were regarding the city's operation were avoided or repealed. But we still had the problem remaining here to where the city manager was making the decision on the police commission, and it rightfully should be reside with the city council. Now, in 2019, the city adopted ordinance. It's now ordinance number 570 to rectify this as far as we're concerned on a local basis. But because it was a matter of statute to begin with, we needed to have it cleaned up. So we're going, the ordinance coincides with correct statute mandate. Hence, we strive to, in Bill 88, to change the appointment of the police commission from the city manager to the city council. Now, the city manager still becomes a member of the police commission and is a ex officio for advice and guidance and recommendations and so forth. but not the decision maker as to the appointment of the 3 police commissioners in the city. And so we're asking that the committee consider passing HB 88 so that we can rectify this and make this housekeeping measure permanent, to go forward and have the city council authority for appointment instead of just only the city manager. And that concludes my presentation, but I will welcome questions on that matter.
Before we go to questions, Representative, do you have any written testimony to submit?
I have no testimony. That's just my presentation remarks relative to the bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee for Representative Stapleton? Representative Mangiacuti has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, sorry, the question is not for Representative Stapleton, but I wanted to get the blue sheet sign up for the first bill, HB 79, at the end of the hearing. How many signed up for and against? Thank you.
8 support, 8 to 1.
8 in favor,
Yes.
1 opposed. In this particular bill, we have 4 support, 1 neutral for House Bill 88. Are there any other questions for Representative Stapleton? If not, I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Representative Porter?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Stapleton. My memory is getting bad, but I seem to remember that this was a bill that we dealt with in this committee last year without a problem. Do you know if that's accurate?
Right. That was HB 1443. Committee approved ought to pass 14-3.
Right. Thank you. That's what I thought. It died with the pandemic. So thank you.
Okay. Representative Mangiacuti, do you have another question?
No, sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. I will do that.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Representative O'Hearn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good. Yep.
Go right ahead.
Good morning. I'm Representative Andrew O'Hearn, Sullivan 3, Ward 1, Claremont. Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow representatives. And obviously, Representative Stapleton has filled you in on the entire bill. It is exactly what it was last year in 1443. The only correction I think I would make is that the council will appoint the police commission, but I don't believe, if I remember right, that the city manager will be part of the police commission. It would just be the 3 members without the city manager. But I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Representative O'Hearn? Seeing none, Representative Cloutier, are you on the line and would like to speak?
Cloutier, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, those are the only speakers that I have listed that indicated they wanted to speak. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this issue, on this bill? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Bill 88.
Mr. Chair, I have a procedural question for you, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm a prime sponsor of a bill we're hearing this afternoon, in a little while, but I did not sign up online to present the bill to the committee. Do I need to do that online for the bills that I'm the sponsor of and I would be introducing, or do you automatically call the person who's introducing the bill?
Well, that's my practice, but I don't think I can speak for the chair of the committee that you're addressing. I would.
No, this is for this committee today, this afternoon. I mean, a little while. If 383, I didn't sign up to present the bill.
certainly give you that courtesy and just.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I just didn't think I had to do that, but I'm still learning.
We all are. So I'm going to take this next couple of minutes before we start the next hearing, give a little public announcement. You probably saw my mask. It says vaccinated on it. I would encourage, certainly your own decision, but I would encourage all our fellow members to be vaccinated if you can. I was vaccinated this week with the Moderna version of the vaccine. I had no side effects, but I'm told the second shot may give me a case of the man flu, which I will completely exploit into chicken soup and probably a hot fudge sundae to help me through it. But I would encourage people to consider, based on your on good science and whatever your current health condition is, whether or not you want to get the shot. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is just a reminder of our mask policy while in the building. Most of you aren't here today, but so you might not be used to the mask policy if you do come to the LOB. That there are 3 ways, it's strictly enforced, and violators of the mask policy will be reported or can be reported to the Speaker's office. And there's 3 primary violations that we are looking for to keep us all safe. One is that if you're in your seat, like I am right now, you can take your mask off. You'll see that most of the time I have mine on anyway, but that's the only time. It's a violation if you get up out of your seat and move about without your mask on. Also, if you're within 6 feet of another person without your mask on, that's a violation. And thirdly, if you go to a common area like a hallway or a restroom or a stairway, you must wear your mask. Having your mask off in that area is also a violation and is reportable to the Speaker's office. So it's strictly enforced, not to be overly punitive, but to protect the safety of each other as we navigate through this terrible pandemic. Hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is coming, but please be safe. Also, tomorrow we have another session, just like today, where we have hearings in the morning and we have executive session in the afternoon. Tomorrow it will be snowing in New Hampshire. It looks like we have finally engaged with the winter season. So if you are traveling, I'd ask you to be safe, and you're always welcome to Zoom to the meeting and if you don't feel safe traveling on the roads. So please be safe. Okay, with that, I'm going to recess for the next 3 minutes, and we will start at 10 o'clock with House Bill 183. So just please relax. We are live to the public, and the mics are hot. So please keep that in mind. Speaker will be Chris True. He's the sponsor of this bill.
Did I see Representative True in the
He
building?
was in here a few minutes ago.
So
He was
he's
just
probably-
checking the schedule.
Mr. Chairman,
Just a second. Someone had a question?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rich LaSalle. I just wanted to make sure that you got me on the attendance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark. Yep, we're going to check that. Maybe I can't check that, but yes, that's what it is.
Jim, is there a way that I can lower people's hands? Or do you have to make me a co-host?
I was trying to make you a co-host, Mr. Chair, and for some reason I couldn't do that, but I will ask Christina if she can make you a co-host.
I can do that, sure.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you again for your help.
Anytime.
It's like big sister watching us at all times. It's such a comfort.
Christina has a voice made for video.
Thank you. I've been practicing.
Except for some minor sound issues today, I think the meeting's going quite well. The IT individual, I didn't catch his name when he came in. He was very quick to troubleshoot, and I guess I was the problem. And I don't know what he did to my computer, but he fixed it pretty quick.
Well, it's probably not the first time you've seen the problem.
Right.
How much snow are we supposed to get tomorrow?
I heard another, like it was last night, another 2 to 4, 2 to 5 inches. And then again, I think on Friday we're going to get another batch.
Yeah.
So we're making up for January.
Well, I know that the people in Derry are complaining about the public works efficiency. You know, you have the same problem in Londonderry?
We have actually, our roads are very well cared for in Londonderry, by both the state and the town. We have a lot of state roads, as Derry does, to come through. The state does a really good job. But our biggest problem usually tends to be ice storms. We have hilly roads, and they get icy, and we don't get salt on right away. We get people off the roads. That's usually the biggest issue.
Well, I came back yesterday from Antrim, and I only saw one car off the road until I got into Londonderry, and then I saw 4.
Oh,
wow. So it's one of those things where obviously the roads are a little slicker in Londonderry than anybody's house.
Here he is. This is the sponsor, just came in. Let's see, the best place for you would probably be right over here.
If you want, I can get a chair over there,
Or you can sit over here too, Representative True. All right, I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 183, which is a bill prohibiting municipalities from requiring a license for a lemonade stand operated by a person under the age of 18. And we have Representative True, who is the sponsor of the bill, and he is going to testify.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
should be good.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Representative Chris True, Rockingham District 4, with the towns of Auburn, Chester, and Sandown. Thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce House Bill 183, an act prohibiting municipalities from requiring a license for a lemonade stand operated by a person under the age of 18. I have submitted this bill not because New Hampshire has a large number of cities sending their health departments to break up children's lemonade stands. In fact, I do not know of any towns in New Hampshire shutting down lemonade stands of children. The goal of HB 183 is to ensure that lemonade stands of children in New Hampshire will not ever be shut down by any town. Please know that I included only lemonade stands in the bill because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. HB 183 is now in the possession of the committee, and it is certainly your decision as to whether you wish to also include in the bill Kool-Aid, Xyrax, Fizzies, or any other terminology that the committee feels is best. New Hampshire is a Dillon's Rule state. and thus New Hampshire defines what it will grant to the local governments. HB 183 clearly states that the New Hampshire towns will not have the authority to license and regulate lemonade stands of children. I hope that the committee agrees that there is not any need for the state of New Hampshire to grant to a local government the authority to control and regulate children's lemonade stands. I ask for your support for House Bill 183. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative. John, do you have a copy of this testimony?
I don't believe so.
Could you give a copy to the clerk?
I will.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Representative True? Yes, Representative Gallagher has his hand up.
Yes, so if you said you can't think of any examples of cities that have already tried to shut down lemonade stands, then may I ask, what exactly was it that inspired this bill? Like, why might it even become an issue in the future that why that a city might want to shut down a lemonade stand?
Thank you for the question. While Office of Legislative Services could not find any instances in New Hampshire, they have found many instances of health departments or towns sending their police forces to shut down a children's lemonade stand. There was even a case, I believe it was a lemonade manufacturer who pledged something like $10,000 to defend children who were fined for operating without a permit or a license. That just seems far too overboard, too heavy-handed. And it's those actions that's why I've introduced the bill. So such actions do not happen in New Hampshire.
Okay, for Representative Mangiapudi, because I think I'm going to anticipate the question you're going to ask. This bill of the people that signed in report are supporting it, 9 support, 1 oppose. Did you have any other comments that you have to unmute?
I do have a question for Prime Sponsor Representative True. So, you know, I am glad this is not in existence in New Hampshire. Having 2 kids in my neighborhood, kids having lemonade, which I encouraged and supported, and they did well, knowing that I didn't violate, I'm happy. But by stating that this is not an issue in New Hampshire, but yet you're trying to prevent, do you think that is making or shining the spotlight on this issue so it would become an issue? Or is it, I'm just trying to figure out why you thought about this.
Thank you for the question. For example, the city of New Hampshire has ordinances where they require peddlers and hawkers of wares as such to apply for a permit for a day. I believe it was something like $50 a day that they would have to apply for a permit for. If Nashua decided that they had a need to cease all children's lemonade stands, they could use that ordinance to call for a $50 permit to be issued for a kid to run a lemonade stand where he might make a couple of dollars. And because we are a Dillon Rule state, knowing that a city could do this if they so chose to. My position is, I don't think that's the New Hampshire way for a health department to go and shut down a kid's lemonade stand or Kool-Aid stand for overreaching reasons.
Next up, we have Representative Porter. And then we'll go to Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative True, for listening to my question. The bill specifically says that a lemonade stand operated by a person under the age of 18. So if I were a 25-year-old and I wanted to set up a stand to make money, but I didn't want to spend $50 for a license my town required, could I then hire a 17-year-old to run the stand for me, operate the stand for me, so that it wouldn't get shut down under the terms of this bill?
Yes, I guess if you owned a home in Nashua and you wanted to hire a 17-year-old kid to sit out in your front lawn with his lemonade stand and sell lemonade, you could do that. I can't imagine why somebody would hire somebody to sit on their front lawn to sell lemonade, but yes, you could hire a 17-year-old, I guess in the hopes that he would make more than $2 or $3 a day selling lemonade.
Representative Porter, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I do, because I'm a little puzzled by this. In Hillsborough, we often have a balloon festival, and one of the most visited stands at the balloon festival is the fresh lemonade stand, where the person is mixing the sugar water and the lemons right in front of you, and they charge $3.50 to $5 for a glass of lemonade. That certainly isn't a stand in front of my house, but under the provision of this bill, would that lemonade stand not be able to be shut down by the town if it didn't have a license?
I'm not familiar with your area.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, sir.
I'm not familiar with your area of New Hampshire, so I don't know what your town would charge a peddler or a hawker to set up a lemonade stand. I guess it all depends on how much money you thought you could make setting up a lemonade stand for a day or for however long you wanted to set it up for. I am in no way talking about extreme situations where somebody is going to try to save himself a whatever the permit is, a $10 permit, where he would have to hire somebody, a teenager, pay them something. That's not the situation that I envision at all. I envision children, like I did when I was a child, setting a table out and selling lemonade to people in my neighborhood who happen to walk by.
Okay, next we'll go to Representative Davis, then we'll have Representative McDonald and Representative Gilman in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative True, for taking my question. Under this bill, if I were a child and I wanted to have a bake sale, would that also be exempt from any prohibition from the town, or is it specific to lemonade? And if it's specific to lemonade, why?
Thank you for the question. Yes, it is specific to lemonade. And as I said before, the reason I made it specifically for lemonade is because I'm not trying to get children to sell clothing or baked goods. All I want a child to be able to do in New Hampshire is set up a table in front of their house and sell lemonade. That's why I only made it lemonade. I wanted to keep the bill as clean and as simple as possible.
Thank you. Representative Don.
I have experience, and I did a lot of the stuff when I was a young kid, and I was referred to as Mr. Popcorn in Wolfboro. And I guess one of the concerns I have, Representative, is the age. Why 16 to 17? Because by then, kids have got their way about it and they're not setting up lemonade stands at their home. Why not make it a little bit younger, like 13 or under or something like that, where they would be working out of the house and setting a stand up front on their phone gun?
Thank you for the question. As I said, I mean, the bill is no longer mine. It is in your hands, and you can certainly, I would not object to that. The reason I chose under 18 is because that is a child. At 18, you're an adult in New Hampshire. Under 18, that's why I chose that particular age. I would certainly have no objection to the committee lowering it to whatever age they felt was more appropriate. I just picked under 18 because you were still a child.
Thank you,
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative True. My question is about this statute originally is enabling, and towns can make a decision on what they want to regulate as far as hawkers and vendors on the streets. So that would make this lemonade issue still a town issue, town to town issue. Is that correct?
If this were to become law, yes, towns would still have ordinances regulating hawkers and peddlers and all that. But obviously what they could not have is the requirement that a 10-year-old child get a $50 permit to sell lemonade. That's what they would not be able to do. They would still be able to regulate other businesses in their town.
Right. Sorry, I missed the word prohibited. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, perhaps from the public, that would like to weigh in on this bill? Bill, or a very similar bill, came to this committee last year, and while it was viewed as being well-intentioned and actively considered, I believe that the bill was not supported primarily for what I would call a minor reason, and that is it would get caught up in the issue of why just lemonade? What if the child wanted to sell a glass of water or Coca-Cola or Kool-Aid? Why would we just single out lemonade? So we're going to exec this bill tomorrow afternoon, and they're prepared an amendment that you all should have a copy of that executes a minor change in the bill where it calls out lemonade. The amendment just changes that to soft drinks. So if someone wants to sell Kool-Aid, orange juice, or whatever, water, it would all be captured under this bill. So that's coming tomorrow afternoon. Any other questions for Representative True while he's still here? I don't have anyone else that's asked to speak, and in deference to Representative Mangiaputi, this is supported 9-1 for those who have. We do have Representative Van has a question. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Dolan. This is actually a question for Representative True. Correct me if I'm wrong, but since we are a Dillon's Rule state, and since cities and towns already have the ability to regulate hawkers and peddlers, I'm not clear why we need to single out children's lemonade stands as a thing that has to be dealt with in a particular way. Can you help me with that?
Thank you for the question. In my opinion,
Go lie down.
there is a history of little kids setting up lemonade stands to get some pocket money. I think any effort to regulate that with a $50 peddler's fee is overhanded. It's just too heavy-handed. Right now, I believe, a town could say, we will only allow a kid to sell lemonade on their front lawn if they pay a $50 peddler's fee. This, being a Dillon state, would say, no, you can't. We would take away that authority from the cities and towns to say, to sell lemonade in our town, a 10-year-old must pay a $50 or $100 peddler's fee. They would if this passes, they would no longer have that authority to do that. The state would take away that authority.
Follow up, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Has any town enforced or threatened to enforce or put on the books any such ordinance? I'm just trying to determine how pressing this is.
I asked OLS to do research for me, and they could not find any instance in New Hampshire where this has happened yet. They found many instances throughout the country where, in some cases, children were fined for violating a city ordinance. That is what I am trying to avoid ever happening here in New Hampshire, because I don't see that as being anywhere close to being the New Hampshire way.
Okay, are there any questions from the public that would like to weigh in on this issue we haven't heard from yet, or anyone else on the committee that would like to ask an additional question? Seeing none, just as a reminder, we will be executing this bill tomorrow afternoon. And our next hearing, thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Our next hearing will be on House Bill 332, which considers the deadlines for developments of regional impact by planning boards. That hearing will start at 10:30, so we're going to be in recess till 10:30. And as a reminder,
my glasses.
the mics are hot, and please mind your manners.
I can raise my hand, but I can't.
Okay, let's get restarted. This is the Municipal and County Government Committee. We are now at the point in the schedule where we're going to hear testimony on House Bill 332, which is relative to deadlines for consideration of developments of regional impact by planning boards. I believe we have Mr. Graves here to speak.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for interrupting, but I do see that Representative Seaworth is here now, and you had asked.
Okay.
Maybe you go first.
Yes, he's the prime sponsor, so I'd like to ask Representative Seaworth to open up for us. I see you indicate that you want to speak for 10 minutes. Do you have a written testimony to submit to the committee?
We may have, Mr. Chair, a slight problem because Mr. Seaworth is using an older version of Zoom. It's I have to promote him to panelist, and I'm unable to do that without getting an error code. If maybe one of us could, in the interim, while I try to sort that out, have one of.
I've sorted it out for you. He should be available.
I see him now.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer. I apologize for that. I have a Chromebook and it doesn't play well with some of the Zoom features.
Well, you're up, so we hear you well, so go ahead and give us your testimony.
All right, and I don't have a written version of this. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for taking the time to hear my bill this morning. My name is Brian Seaworth. I am from Pembroke. I represent the district that includes Pembroke and Chichester, and I am the prime sponsor of HB 332. This bill proposes to make a simple change to the law so that there's parity between planning board applications with and without a finding that the application is a development of regional impact. Briefly, just to get into the terms, the development of regional impact is a way within the RSAs for regional planning that a planning board can acknowledge that a project impacts other communities outside of its own jurisdiction. So if a planning board determines that an application is a DRI, then the affected communities plus the regional planning commission, which is appropriate, will be notified as abutters for the plan. When you do this, there's some specific overhead, administrative, it's specified in the RSA, and that will end up delaying when the application gets worked on. Typically, it's for one meeting cycle. To explain why I think this bill is necessary, I think it'll be fastest just to go through my own experience with this. I am also wearing a different hat, the chair of my town's planning board. And we had an experience, it happened in the fall of 2019. An application came in. We were actually familiar with it. We knew the property, we knew the developer. They had had a previous application on this, and so we knew that it was going to be a DRI. And the applicant was, of course, eager to expedite things. They asked us if there was any shortcuts to the process. Our town's planner ended up putting a lot of time in, having a lot of discussion. We worked through legal. I spent some time reviewing the RSAs, and ultimately we decided we had to follow the process as the RSAs required it. So what happened, we met, it was right after Thanksgiving 2019. We had a meeting, we accepted the application as complete. We determined that it was a regional impact, which then set into motion the process for notification for that. Now, our planning board, we review applications monthly, the fourth week of each month, with one exception. In December every year, because of the Christmas holiday, we move our meeting forward. So what happened was there was no way for us to continue that meeting from November to the December meeting because the deadlines didn't allow it. So we continued to January. You all had a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, came back in January, opened the hearing on the process now with the regional impact notification having gone out. And, well, the first thing we had to discuss was that the 65-day requirement for a planning board to complete review on an application and make a decision was now due to expire within the week. So our discussion was, well, is the applicant willing to extend the time for review? To make a long story short, it set a bad tone for the application, and we spent a good chunk of that first month's hearing discussing issues around the delay. So putting on my other hat, as I explained to the planning board why we got into this and why the law required doing what we did, I offered to come up with a bill, come up with some legislation that would address this problem. I think if this bill's enacted, it would simply automatically do what's going to happen anyway through the process that's outlined in the RSAs. So I think it'll simply smooth the process all around, make sure that the applicant, the board, and everyone spends less time on compliance with the RSA and more time reviewing the application. So with that, again, I'll thank you for hearing this bill this morning. I hope you find that it makes sense and recommend its passage, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, before we take questions, just to let you all know, the sign-in on this bill on 332, there were 4 sign-ins. 2 supported it, 1 opposed it, and 1 is neutral. We're going to hear next from Mr. Grays from NHMA, but before we go to Mr. Grays, is there anyone on the committee that has questions for Representative Seaworth? Okay, seeing none, can we bring up Mr. Grays?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Nate Grays from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and we do oppose this bill as written, but we are more than happy to work with the sponsor to accomplish what he's attempting to do here. And the reason we oppose it is because that it doesn't seem to do what the sponsor wants it to do, in that once it changes the language of RSA 676:4 and adds in some wording so that it says, upon the determination by the planning board, the board that a submitted application is complete according to the board's regulations, or in the case of development of regional impact, upon the commencement of the public hearing pursuant to RSA 3657. But when you go to RSA 3657, that's the board's required review of a development to determine whether it has a regional impact. And there's no actual hearing required under that. So the way this is written, it looks like it's referencing a hearing which doesn't actually occur. So it doesn't seem to accomplish what the sponsor wants to accomplish, which is to speed up the process here. And as I said, I'm more than happy to work with the sponsor to try to come up with some language that would accomplish what he's trying to accomplish here.
Thank you, Mr. Grays. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Grays from the NHMA on his testimony? Yes, Representative Manzacuti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I said, I'm staying true to my conscience of asking questions, being the first time on this committee. My question to you, Representative from New Hampshire Municipal Association, is how does this shift the responsibility or ownership of local control versus state, or Is there any way that this will bring uniformity amongst the municipalities that we have in New Hampshire?
So I don't know that it really does that. The way that the process currently works is, if you're going to submit something like, let's say, a grocery store, and it's right on the border of two towns, and so you submit it to the town that you're in, and the planning board looks at it and says, okay, well, this is obviously going to have a regional impact because it's going to affect our neighbors, the municipality next door, more traffic, et cetera. So we're going to provide them notice. And then once they have received notice, they have the opportunity to give us input about how that's going to affect their community. Just as any abutter would do, or anyone else with a right to talk about it. It's basically to notify the municipality to say, hey, thanks to this grocery store, we're going to have, estimated double the amount of traffic on the street, or whatever the case may be. And that's the current process. And it seems like what happened in Representative Seaworth's case is that they ran into a problem with the 65-day deadline to act upon the application, mainly because of the holidays and how everything worked out there. And it certainly seems like the purpose is to try to give some more flexibility here to the local planning board to ensure that it can start this process a little bit sooner if it knows that it's going to be a regional impact sooner, and therefore not run afoul of that 65 days. So still keep the entire process short within that period, but give them the opportunity to start notifications a little bit earlier. And that seems to be the intent as he explained it. Although if I misunderstood that, I'd certainly like Representative Seaworth to correct me.
Okay, next we have a question from Representative Klee.
Thank you. My actual questions have been answered, but when I read this over, and I'm sorry, I meant to mention it earlier, line 19, the word plat, is that supposed to be plan?
I believe it's supposed to be plat because
Okay.
because that's the what they're called in the other statutes.
Okay, thank you. As Representative Mangiapudi mentioned, I too am new to this and had not heard that term. So it's a term I will look up. Thank you so much.
Okay, on this particular bill, those who signed in, we have 2 that support, 1 opposes, and 1 is neutral. Are there any other questions for those that are testifying? Is there anybody from the public that would like to weigh in on this bill? Seeing none, we will enter a recess and pick up our next bill at 11 o'clock, House Bill number 380, which is relative to the election of Grafton.
Representative, we have lost audio. We didn't hear the end of that.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, the audio came back. I just think we missed what you were saying. Were you just recessing until the next bill?
I'm recessing to the next bill at 11 o'clock, and I just reminded everybody that the mics are hot and be careful you don't put something out over the airways that you don't intend to.
Great, thank you.
Chip is yours, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Well, see, that's like,
We have.
are the signs supposed to be pointed toward the camera or the chair?
Yes, Ned Gordon, Representative Ned Gordon, yes, we do.
We're gonna go to him first.
The time? Oh, we still have time? Oh, good. Jeez, I thought we had to go.
Yeah, we're gonna fire up now.
Yeah.
Okay, again, good morning. This is the Municipal and County Government Committee at the State House, and we are about to consider a hearing on House Bill 380, which is relative to the election of Grafton County Commissioners. On the sign-in list, we have 6 sign-ins, 5 in support, 0 opposed, and 1 is neutral. And as we start, we're going to start with Representative Ned Gordon. Representative Gordon, do you have any written testimony to submit? If you haven't already? I don't know if Representative Gordon needs to unmute.
He is unmuted.
Ned?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm actually up at Dartmouth Hitchcock right now, and so I'm a little bit difficult situation. But for the record, my name is Ned Gordon, and I represent Grafton County District 9, and I am the prime sponsor of this bill. This bill passed the House in its current form last session and went over to the Senate and then died in the Senate as a result of the COVID issues. What it does, it's very simple. And what it does is create a rotating term for one of the 3 Grafton County commissioners. One commissioner at all times would serve a 4-year term. The purpose of doing so is to prevent the situation, which has occurred in the past, where you have 3 brand new commissioners all elected contemporaneously, and none has any history or background with regard to the operation of the county. We found that that is not a good circumstance, not a good situation. And so the idea is to provide continuity. I understand that other counties may have similar type arrangements. We would start with the commissioner, and it would start with the election in 2022 with District 1, and that particular commissioner would serve 4 years, and then each of the commissioner districts would rotate after that. So you would have one commissioner serving a 4-year term at all times. And that's the very simple purpose of the bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for Representative Gordon on the bill as he's testifying? Yes, Representative Gallagher has a question.
So we had another bill previously last week about Rockingham County wanting to move some of their elections or their officers' term lengths to be 4 years as well. Since this bill does something similar to it, is there any possibility that they could be combined at all?
Obviously, we'd like to see this bill move forward, but if you found it was more convenient to combine the 2 bills and they did the same thing, served the same purpose, I'm not sure there would be any objection to that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Guthrie. 380
we're going to take up at a later time. I think that might be the bill they're referring to. Doesn't cover the county commissioners. It covers the other county offices. So it might be difficult to marry the two together.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from Representative Gordon?
I have a question.
Yes, Representative Piemonte.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question, Representative Gordon. What is the term now for the county commissioners?
Each county commissioner serves a 2-year term. So they're elected every 2 years, or up for election on every 2 years. And there have been circumstances where all 3 of our commissioners, we have 3 brand new commissioners. Again, none with any history of the county.
Follow up.
So there's no possible way that you can make your county commissioners work alternating your 2 years and keeping 2 on and 1 elected, and then next session do the same thing? You feel this is much easier? Is that what you're saying?
Well, in effect, that's what this bill does. It makes sure that you always have 1 commissioner that has continuity, that's going to be there and isn't up for re-election in that 2nd year.
Thank you.
Okay, next question from Representative Trelevin, and then we'll go to Representative Mangiapudi after that.
Things to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Representative Gordon, for coming to testify. Following up on Representative Gallagher's question, I think I want to note that the Rockingham County Commissioners bill change number, I don't recall, came to us wanting all commissioners to be 4-year terms. And this would be just 1 commissioner 4-year term. I understand what the county is trying to do to retain some continuity. I'm not sure they can go together. And as another testifier has said earlier today, you know, now that it's our bill, we can look at them and see what we think. My only comment. Thank you.
If I could just respond, I think there was a consensus that we liked the fact that in most cases, county commissioners are elected for a 2-year term. But there was a need for that continuity. That's why we're only rotating 1 of the commissioners' terms for 4 years.
Good, thank you.
And next we have a question from Representative Mangiapudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Gordon, for taking my question. So if you're saying 1 commissioner is going to serve 4, so over 3 cycles, all 3 commissioners will be serving 4-year term, isn't it? Or is it just, if it's going to be rotating? And my second question is also, how does it change the statute that's in existence right now?
Well, that's exactly what the bill does. It changes the statute. The statute currently says that each commissioner serves a 2-year term. And this would just change it so that 1 of the commissioners would serve a 4-year term, and you were correct that they would be, that it would rotate among the districts, starting with District 1 and then 2 and then 3. So over a set of 3 elections, you would rotate the that 4-year term.
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go right ahead.
So this is, I mean, the 2-year term for commissioners, 3 commissioners, is a uniform across all counties. And why just start with 1? I represent Hillsborough County, and it is the same issue with all the counties. How about if, you know, all other, every elected position except the US Senate, it's all 2-year terms. So it's going to just carve out one pitch. How can we justify that?
Representative Gordon, do you have a response to that question?
Incorrect, but are at least one other county who has already gone to this rotating scheme for county commissioners.
Did that answer your question, Representative?
No, which one? I didn't hear. His audio is not. Which county has already gone?
I think, Representative Gordon, I think you cut out from the audio for part of your response. Could you redo it?
Yes, I don't, I can't tell you which county, but it's my understanding that at least one other county has already gone to this type of rotating longer term in order to, for the same purpose, and that we've already, the legislature's already done this in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Representative Gordon? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on this bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. That closes the hearing for House Bill 380. Just a quick comment from the chair. Those of you who are on Zoom, I only need to see you if we're going to be voting in executive session. You need to click off your video, take care of personal business, or get up and move around or whatever. That's certainly fine. Feel free to turn off your video, which should be an option for you down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So I only need to see you if we're in a voting mode. But other than that, feel free to turn off your video and go about your business if you have to go to the bathroom or get something to eat or whatever. Okay. We have some time now. We have almost 20 minutes before the next bill. So I think to make better use of our time, I'm going to collapse a little bit of the schedule that we're going to be seeing this afternoon. Now, I have a request from the ranking member, Representative Porter, to move to HB 586 as our first bill to exec this afternoon. Is that request still standing, Representative Porter?
Yes, I would appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if the bill I was going to testify on has been recessed. I'm waiting to hear that, but it would ease my mind if I knew I could be with our committee when we vote on that bill.
Yeah, plan on that. All right, so I'm going to look at this afternoon's exec session. I'm going to try to pull in HB 101, which is relative to the close of a county's books of records. So Representative McDonald, do you have a motion you'd like to make?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe since I submitted an amendment, we will have to vote on that amendment first, which changed the time frame from 30 to 45 days.
Okay, do you have the number of the amendment so we can reference it?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, are we in an executive session now?
Yes, we'll be going into executive session. I'm just
okay, thank you.
cleaning up some documents at this point before we go into executive session. Okay, I have the amendment.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we are now in executive session, considering House Bill 101. The first thing we're going to do is we have a motion by Representative McDonald on 2021-0164H. You want to speak to that? You want to make the motion and speak to the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can I just get that number to you one more time? 2021.
2021-0164H.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I originally did this bill, I put in 30 days, and talking to one of my commissioners, they requested that I increase it to 45 days, which I didn't see any problems with that. What I hope to do with this is to try to put some incentive to get the books closed a little bit earlier, and also to keep my particular county moving forward in doing that. And I think by having them contact revenue administration, that'll give them the incentive to carry on and get our audits done. As I said, we just completed our 2019 audit about a month or so ago.
So is your motion to accept the amendment as presented?
Yes, with the increase to 45 days.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Yes, we have a second
Yes, Charlie Melvin.
from Representative Melvin. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, want to take the roll call on voting on the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
Yes.
Representative Klee?
Yes.
Representative Tripp? Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative McBride?
Yes.
Representative Mel?
Yes.
Representative Ayer?
Yes.
Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
Representative Trelevin?
Yes.
Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Majori?
Yes.
Representative Davis?
Yes.
Representative Megaputi?
Yes.
Representative Van?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes, and Representative Dolan?
Yes.
19-0, Mr. Chairman.
19-0 on the amendment. So now we have House Bill 101 amended. Is there a motion to OTP the bill as amended?
I make a motion, the bill to be OTP as amended.
Is there a second? Did I hear a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Representative Melvin. Okay. Mr. Clerk, if you call the roll on the OTP, the bill as amended.
Representative Piemonte?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
Yes.
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
The video is frozen. I see him. Representative Lascelles, can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. How do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Ayer,
Yes.
Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Gallagher,
Yes.
Representative Trelevin,
Yes.
Representative Gilman,
Yes.
Representative Majori,
Yes.
Representative Davis,
Yes.
apologies, Representative Mangaputi,
Yes.
Representative Van,
Yes.
Select votes yes, and Representative Dolan.
Yes.
19-0. Mr. Chairman, do you want this to go on the consent calendar?
Yes, without objection, I will place this on the consent calendar. Okay, we still have another 10 minutes. House Bill 459 is the bill that prohibits the transfer of funds within an adopted budget to the general ledger line when the entry has $0. We do have an amendment. Do we have an?
No, I don't have it yet.
Oh, we don't have it yet. Okay,
I'm
so
sending it to you, though.
pardon me while I check to see if I have it. You know, I'm accelerating the calendar here. Bear with me. I don't have it yet. Okay.
Mr. Chair, have we gotten copies of this amendment?
No, I was just checking to see if I got a copy and I don't, so it looks like it's still in process. Okay, so let's move on to House Bill 445. This is a bill that has to do with competitive bidding in Carroll County. And we have some input that this bill may have some legal problems. And what I think we ought to do is, I think we ought to retain this bill, put it in front of legal counsel, let them opine on it, and then we take it back and either change the bill, make it legal, or accept it as is. But I think rather than putting a potentially compromised bill in front of the House, I would like to see the committee agree to retain the bill and let legal go through it, and make sure that there aren't any problems with it. But I'll open for discussion if anyone would like to opine on that thought.
So we would hold the bill and work on it over the summer and deal with it next year? Is that how that works?
We could do, we could also just hold it.
Not hearing you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Is that puts an echo in it. You hear me now?
That's better.
Yes, we can hear you.
So what we can do is we can retain it until legal gives us an opinion, and then we can put it back on our calendar. We don't have to wait till next year.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure, but that's what I think.
My understanding of a retained bill is that we retain it to work over the summer and vote, take it up again in the fall. And in the second year, we interim study and do the same thing, but don't take it up for a vote because the session is over.
Well, let's do this, because I'm not sure, so why don't we just plan on taking it off the exec calendar. Let me get an expert opinion on how we either gonna retain it or just move it out to the future a little bit.
It's not an early bill, is it, Mr. Chair?
It is not really,
I think if you call the clerk, he would be able to answer that question for us too.
Representative Dolan, I'm more than happy to check in on that for you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about this process as well.
Yes.
If I may, thank you. I think I heard you say that we would retain the bill, get a legal opinion on it, and then fix the bill. Isn't it up to the sponsor to do that, not the committee?
Yes, what we would do is, well, once it's in executive session, it's our bill. It's not the sponsor's bill anymore. So we could fix it with an amendment, or we could ITL the bill if it's too badly flawed or whatever. So it really becomes when it's in executive session, it really becomes our bill. It's no longer the sponsor's bill. That's somewhat of a nuanced answer, but that's the way it goes. But to your point, though, I think that if we found a flaw like that, we would certainly want to engage with the sponsor so that we retain the intent of the bill. All right, so House Bill 445 will not be exec this afternoon until unless we get an opinion real quick on how to retain. But I'm thinking that we'll push that out at least till tomorrow.
Mr. Chair, we used to have an old saying in municipal and county that we do tune-ups, not engine overhauls on bills. Just so that was what I was learning early on.
And there's also one I heard, if it's a bad bill, don't fix it, kill it. So with that advice, I certainly don't disagree. The next bill, to be exact, is House Bill 560, which is the election of Rockingham County officials. Is there any discussion about that before we move into that bill? Did you remember that we heard that bill last week? Does anybody remember that bill?
Yes, I do.
I remember.
Yes, I remember it.
Chair, it looks like Representative Power has her hand up.
Yes, Representative Power, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Dolan, for taking my question. So my concern is with regard to this bill is that it changes the term of the election of all county offices in Rockingham to 4 years. And so my concern would be is what are the ramifications what it would be the effect for Rockingham County's elected officers to be 4 years, whereas in other counties within the state, it would be different. Is this a concern or is it a non-concern?
Good point. Let's leave that question on the table and see if we can chew on it a bit. Representative Klee, you had a comment?
Yeah, pardon my, the comment that I have is kind of a question. The last bill that we had that was similar to this in public hearing, a comment was made that other counties are doing something similar. But when asked directly what counties, that answer couldn't be given. I would feel more comfortable to know what counties are doing things similar with their commissioners and so on before we voted on this. perhaps someone from this committee does know that answer. And I do have concerns that and I know someone's got to be an example, but that we're piecemealing from county to county to county and not trying to keep things similar. So I do have some issues with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tripp?
Thank you for taking my, it's not a question, it's a statement. If you look at the, how to say 653:1, this is the RSA that's being amended by this, or changed by this bill. And if you were to look at section 6E, it says that Sullivan County does the 2-4 term for commissioners. Rockingham County does the 2-2-4 for commissioners. And it appears that Merrimack County does the same also. So there's precedent for having different terms in counties within the state.
Okay, so we have a precedent. Representative Power, you have a follow-up?
Yes, I would like to answer Representative Klee's inquiry. So in preparation for the hearing for this bill, I did do research. And presently in New Hampshire, the counties of Carroll, Cheshire, Sullivan, Belknap, Rockingham, Merrimack, and Coos, they have the 4-year, 2-year rotating terms. And this was all put on the books beginning in 1980 for Cheshire. And I have dates for all of them. And the most recent, I believe, I'm looking at my notes here, it was Merrimack in 1996. So therefore, all counties within the state have this 4-year, 2-year rotating term, except presently for Hillsborough, Grafton, and Stratford. They still have the 2-year terms for all 3 commissioners.
Okay, so you're concerned having non-congruent terms across the counties? Yes, Representative Powell?
May I also just follow up with a comment? So based on that information with regard to this bill, I would be comfortable in having an amendment such that the county commissioner for Rockingham would have, let me see. No, I take that back. No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Representative McDonald, do we have an amendment already on this?
I thought we were supposed to receive one, but I haven't seen it. I'm just thinking about that.
Okay. Yes, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking my question. My question has to do with the format of the structure of this bill as it's been presented to us. As I read 653.1, all of the counties that have differing lengths of terms for specific offices are simply listed in alphabetical order. Under letter A, Grafton and Hillsborough counties, 1 county commissioner, et cetera, et cetera. I don't understand why this particular bill calls out except for Rockingham County. Why couldn't it just follow the format of the others and simply list the terms? I just don't understand why it should be in a different wording and a different format from the rest of the law.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still a little concerned because we're talking different kinds of officers. And my understanding from listening to the previous testimony today, the concern is for continuation of institutional knowledge so that one county commissioner has a 4-year term and the others have 2. This bill it isn't dealing with county commissioners at all. It's dealing with the other offices within the county. And so I'm not sure that the rationale for 4 years is the same rationale as was given for the 4-year term for county commissioners. I understand the argument that was given for the 4-year terms for this bill, but I don't think we can equate the county commissioner 4-year term with these. I don't think they're parallel.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? We do have an amendment that's been proposed by Representative Weiler to the bill, and
The amendment added it added one officer too.
yes, it adds,
Yeah.
for the record, it's Amendment 2021-0187H. H is in hotel.
One more time, Jim.
2021-0187H. Representative Trelevin, yes, you have your hand up. You have to unmute though.
Here I am at my dining room table, serving as my /office, completely confused. First of all, what bill are we talking about?
This is Bill 560, House Bill 560.
560, okay. And do we have an amendment or not?
Yes, we have an amendment. It's 2021-0187H.
So what are we talking about now?
That amends House Bill 560.
No, I got it. But in the conversation, are we talking about the amendment or the bill?
We're talking about both. The amendment is a very small change, just adds one more position, adds the treasurer to the bill.
Okay, now I understand where we are. I'm sorry, I was off in the woods with the cat. I'll be back now. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mangiaputi, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. I was confused as to what we were addressing, and it seems like it's a piecemeal. Hillsborough County, coming from the largest county in the state, you know, the similar institutional knowledge and the election of every 2 years for all the officers, and changing that does affect. And so instead of changing the statute at the state level, why each county is doing their own stuff? And this is, I'm not able to wrap my head around that.
Okay, good comment. Thank you. So we had this amendment that would change some of the language to add the county treasurer into the list of officials that this affects. However, we will only vote on the amendment if there's an okay to proceed motion. If it's inexpedient to legislate, then the amendment is not in order. We have a hand up from Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really not a question, it's a flippant comment. Representative Mangiaputi, welcome to municipal and county government.
Yes, it can be kind of piecemeal at times. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Guthrie.
Thank you. I'd just like to make the comment that you all recall that I think that almost all of the officers that are referred to in this bill did come forward, did give us the same rationale, which was to allow them to do their job better instead of having to campaign for their office the second year that they were in office. So I just wanted to remind the board that it was pretty much a unanimous presentation by the people holding the office, and they used the same rationale. And it seemed to be fairly simple as far as the bill was concerned.
Well, thank you for that reminder. Any other comments from the committee, or any comments? That's it. We're not going to go to the public. We're just taking comments from the committee. Yes, Representative Powell.
Is it correct that the commissioners in the state they receive a stipend and not a salary per se, whereas the other elected county officers, they do receive a salary for their positions?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if the positions listed here receive a salary. Some do. I think some do receive a salary. The elected officials don't. They just receive mileage, and I think there's an hourly rate that's also paid to elected officials also for meetings. But like the treasurer, the registry of deeds, the sheriff, things like that, the county attorney, they do have a salary that they get paid. Representative Porter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. All of those positions are elected. It's just the county delegation who doesn't get a salary, not the county officers. But to the point that they all expressed to us that they could do their jobs better if they had a 4-year term rather than a 2-year term. My counter to that is I sure could have done my job better with a 4-year term as well. I think most of us would prefer not to have to go out and campaign after 2 years of serving. It would be much better for us if we could devote our time to our position and not have to worry about that. So I'm sure they all would like to have a 4-year position, just as I would like to have a 4-year position. But I'm not sure in my mind still that that's the best thing for the people of the citizens of the county to have 4-year terms for their officers.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up now. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little confused too. Are we still waiting for a motion on the bill? Or
Yes.
Are we still in discussion?
We're still in discussion, but I was going to ask for a motion to either ITL or OTP the bill.
Well, I move OTP House Bill 560.
Second.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We still got to do a vote on the whether you accept the amendment.
Right. If you want to do an OTP, then we first have to attack the amendment.
Okay.
And then we would the motion would be to OTP as amended.
Okay.
So the amendment. Are you interested in making a motion on the amendment?
I moved to OTP on the amendment to House Bill 560.
Okay, that's amendment 2021-0187H. It's an amendment to House Bill 560. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Representative Guthrie. So to ask the clerk to take the roll on the amendment.
Okay. Representative Piemonte.
Yes.
Representative Porter.
Yes.
Representative Lee.
Yes.
Yes.
Representative Lascelles.
Yes.
Representative McBride.
Yes.
Representative Melvin.
Yes.
Representative Ayer.
Yes.
Representative Power.
Yes.
Representative Gallagher.
Yes.
Representative Tree-Levin.
Now that I have my head screwed on straight and I know what bill I'm talking about, an amendment, yes.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Gilman.
Yes.
Representative Majority.
Yes.
Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Megapudi,
Yes.
Representative Van,
Yes.
clerk votes yes, and Representative Dolan,
Yes.
19-0.
Okay, now we're looking for a motion to OTP House Bill 560 as amended.
I move to OTP House Bill 560 as amended.
It's been seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll call. By the way, if the bill does not pass OTP, then I'll accept an additional motion after that.
Okay, Representative Piemonte,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
No.
Representative Fleet,
No.
Representative Tripp,
Yes.
Representative Ellis,
Yes.
right? Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Air,
Yes.
Representative Power,
No.
Representative Gallagher,
No.
Representative Trelevin,
Gotta start somewhere. Yes.
Representative Gilman,
No.
Representative Majori,
No.
Representative Davis,
No.
Representative Mangapudi,
No.
Representative Van,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Dolan,
Yes.
passes 11-8.
Okay, that cannot go on the consent calendar. I'm going to take a recess for 3 or 4 minutes.
Representative Maggiore,
Yes.
would you please tell the clerk that I would be glad to write the minority report for this bill?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
I didn't know if he could hear me.
You can.
Well, Mr. Clerk, I'd be glad to write the minority report for this bill.
Thank you, Representative Ford.
For taking on my responsibility. What's next? 383? Is that what we're up to? He's okay. Yes, Representative Tripp, you're going to have to jump up and down when you have your hand up.
Well, it's interesting. I sat back there and I thought, well, he doesn't see me because I'm all the way back there. So I moved up here.
Sit right in front of him.
Well, yeah, maybe I could sit there.
There you go. These should be the worst problems we have.
What?
These should be the worst problems we have.
Representative Majori,
Yes, sir.
that amendment is on its way to.
Okay, thank you.
So that's for 4. Representative McDonald. get representatives on it. Amendments on it, so wait for 4 or 5 minutes.
Representative Maggiore, I just got an email from Representative Suzanne Smith, who said she had Representative Gordon was not sure he could testify, and she had signed up at 9 this morning to testify and present in his place, and she was wondering why we didn't see her. Also, she said she sent, and I have received it in my personal email, something from her to the whole committee. So I'm just asking that the committee be aware of that. And look in your email from something from Representative Suzanne Smith pertaining to the bill that Representative Gordon just spoke to us about. What bill was that? The one about the Grafton County commissioners.
Thank you, Representative Porter.
For you?
Yeah, that would, I would see that.
I think it was, no, let me just check. 168. Yeah, 168. Yeah. Shall I now? Yeah, he did the other one too.
That might be a bug in this system that we have now for signing on to bills if you can't sign on to speak once the hearing has started.
And what I'm noticing is in the remote testifying, the sheet that we get for people testifying.
Yeah.
Not see Representative Smith, but then you're right, I do see the email that has come through. So,
It might just be a quirk of the system, but it is something we should be aware of because emergencies are going to be happening and people are going to have to sign in late upon occasion. So,
If I could, Representative Porter, Representative Majori, I'm more than happy to answer this question.
Thank you, Christina. That would be great.
So we have to print the testimony sheets first thing in the morning, but it is understood that if people sign up after 8 o'clock, that it is the purview of the chair to ask for public that may have not been signed up in time for that 8 o'clock printing. So there will be public that are not on the list, but we just can't, we aren't able to do it for each bill. So we just request that the chair ask for public commentary and those folks would raise their hands to be able to speak.
Well, that makes sense. I'm not sure how then we have someone who would be introducing a bill in someone's place. How does that work? The same way?
I would recommend that they email the committee with that particular change. And if they raise their hand, we're in kind of a new world. So that's something I can bring back. Right. I can bring back to House Committee Services with that point, and we can see what we can come up with.
Thanks.
And I do recommend on my part, I see the email that
can't hear you, Representative.
Okay, I got it. Yep.
Can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yep.
The host muted me. Oh my goodness. The host doesn't like me.
We can hear you without muting, and that would be, I want to avoid feedback. Sorry.
I was just going to say I accept the failure on that one because I see that the email came through about 11:15, but I didn't immediately recognize it as someone who wanted to speak to this. It's just that, like you say, the system of trying to figure out if you can read the email and recognize these folks while you're doing the meeting too. So I will be more attentive to that. And certainly send apologies to Representative Smith.
Representative Maggiore.
Yes.
How long is the break? Do we know?
I imagine it's going to end very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next bill we're going to hear for the Municipal and County Committee is House Bill 383, relative to the quarterly or semi-annual collection of taxes in certain municipalities. We have Carolyn Lear from DRA to testify.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to introduce the bill?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Marjorie Porter and I represent Hillsborough District 1, the towns of Antrim, Hillsborough, and Windsor. And this bill that we've brought forth is a bookkeeping bill that has been requested by DRA. We had this bill last year and it did pass this committee, but died in the pandemic. And so I'm going to turn over for questions and information to Carolyn Lear, who is from DRA, who will explain the intricacies of the bill. Thank you.
Here.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carolyn Lear. I'm the Assistant Commissioner at the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, you're doing fine.
Perfect. So this bill really has its roots in a situation that occurred in 2017 in the town of Goffstown. The school district had discovered an accumulated fund balance of approximately $10 million and decided to use this money to offset the amount of taxes that needed to be raised for local education in 2018. As a result, this caused a significant one-time drop in Goffstown's property tax rate. And because municipalities use the prior year's tax rate for purposes of calculating the first property tax billing, had the rate not been modified, Goffstown would have drastically over-collected with their first billing and had to collect significantly less in their second billing. Goffstown reached out to the department and asked us to assist them with the situation by recalculating their tax rate for purposes of that first billing to really account for the fact that they had a bunch of additional money that wasn't really accounted for in last year's rate. The effect was to sort of smooth out the property tax billing over the course of that year and avoid significantly over collecting in the first half. We did do that recalculation per Goffstown request, but we felt that it would be ideal if the statute was clear for every municipality, that this was something that could be done. And also, we think that the legislature is the right body to sort of weigh in on how significant a change in the amount to be collected needs to be in order to trigger our ability to do that recalculation. The legislation sets that that at 15% change from year to year. That sort of summarizes why we've requested this bill, and I'm happy to answer any of the committee's questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Do you have any of that in writing that you could submit to the committee?
Mr. Chair, I sent you an email on Friday with that, and I can resend it to the full committee if that's how you'd prefer it to be disseminated.
Could you please just send it to the entire committee?
Perfect.
That way the clerk will get it and put it as part of the folder for the bill. Do we have any? Yes, we have one question from Representative Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking my question, and thank you, Ms. Lear, for your testimony. My question is with regard to the language of this bill. Does this pertain only in the instance or case in which there is excess tax or excess revenue?
No, it does not. It would apply in the opposite situation as well. And in fact, in the case of the town of Goffstown, we did do the recalculation a second time in the next year, because in 2019, there wasn't a $10 million excess in revenue. In 18, there had been. So we again had to modify the first property tax rate for bills upwards to avoid drastically under collecting in the first billing for the town of Goffstown. Again, the goal being just to smooth it out so that there's only 50% collected in each half of the year.
Any follow-up? Yes?
Yes, follow-up. So I was having a little bit of the difficulty abstracting in my mind what this would look like. I guess, yeah, what it would look like. So I guess my question now is there any possibility that there could be a deficit in the amount of taxes collected as opposed to what was raised and appropriated by the meeting? I think that the answer is no, based on your most recent explanation. Is that a correct understanding?
That's correct. It doesn't change the ultimate amount of tax that would be collected in any year. It just prevents it from being either over or under collected in the first half.
Thank you. That clarifies.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the public?
Mr. Chair, I do have one hand raised from Becky Benvenuti of NHMA.
Yes, Ms. Benvenuti, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
One time.
All right. And good morning. It's almost afternoon, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Becky Benvenuti. I am the Government Finance Advisor for the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and I wanted to speak today in support of HB 383. For all the reasons stated by the sponsor, NHMA supports this bill. Smoothing out the incremental annual tax billing, as Ms. Lear stated, provides a win-win in terms of cash flow for both municipalities and individual property taxpayers. So we would encourage you to vote to pass on HB 383. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other comments or questions for those testifying? Okay, seeing none, this seems like a pretty clean bill, and so I would ask the committee your thoughts about execing the bill right now, if unless there are some concerns and more research needs to be done. I'll open up discussion.
Tell me if the blue sheet, how many signed up? Just
There were two people signed up on the blue sheet. Both were supporting, but we had Ms. Benvenuti that additionally testified, so you can count that as 3 in support, 0 opposed, 0 neutral.
Thank you.
And so Representative Porter, the question for you, are you introduced the bill, are you okay with?
I'll make a motion of ought to pass on HB 383.
All right, so we're going to go into executive session on House Bill 383. There's no amendment. And I have a motion to pass. Seconded by Representative Tripp.
We can't hear.
Sorry, it's been seconded by Representative Tripp. Did you get that?
Representative Dolan, would you mind checking your microphone?
I think it's too far away from you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the pass from Representative Porter. Second, Representative.
No, we've lost you again.
How about now? Is this better?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we had a motion on to pass from Representative Porter and a second from Representative Tripp. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to take the roll.
Ought to pass HB 383. Representative Piemonte,
Yes.
Representative,
Did you call me?
yes,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Yes.
thank you. Representative Klee,
Yes.
Representative Tripp,
Yes.
Representative Guthrie,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Representative Ayer? Yes. What?
Yeah.
Peter, could I just ask you to unmute and vote one more time? Representative Ayer? Can we ask you to unmute and vote one more time because we had trouble hearing you with the audio?
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Gallagher,
Yes.
Representative Trelevin,
Yes.
Representative Gilman,
Yes.
Representative Majori,
Yes.
Representative Davis, Representative Davis,
Did we lose? Oh, there she is. She's still there.
She's unmuted.
Representative Davis, how do you vote?
Yes.
thank you. Representative Mangaputi,
Yes.
Representative Van,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Dolan,
Yes.
19-0. Would you like that to go on the consent calendar?
Yes, without objection, I'll place that on the consent calendar. Thank you. I want to, we have one more bill to hear, and then I'm going to make an announcement that I want to express to the committee my appreciation for your indulgence. It's a little choppy today, changing the format so that you can question witnesses each as they testify, as feedback that was given before. And I've been trying to clean up our exec calendar by pulling some things in. I'm having a little bit of a medical issue at the moment, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what I'm going to do before we go to HB 404, which is going to be our last bill, I'm going to basically cancel our executive session this afternoon, and I'm going to make a public announcement right now that those bills that remain in our executive session, which are House Bill 459, 586, and 445, that we're going to exec them tomorrow afternoon. That we're going to be postponing the executive session on those three bills, and we'll add them to the calendar tomorrow afternoon. We just got confirmation with the House clerk that it was appropriate to do it in this way. Also, I want to shout out an appreciation to Representative Porter. You were absolutely correct in the interpretation of retaining the bill that we had spoken about earlier. So thank you for your advice on that. We checked on that as well, and you were correct. So we're going to hear one more bill, HB 404, and then we're going to be done for the day. And tomorrow you should have all the calendar for tomorrow. And in the meantime, I'll get myself squared away at the doctor, and we'll continue tomorrow. It's not a big deal. It's just something I got to take care of.
The amendment 459 should be, everyone should have that.
Okay, I've just been informed that you all should be on distribution now for an amendment for House Bill 459.
Which we'll hear tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll be hearing that tomorrow. That's the, we'll exact that tomorrow with the other bills. That's the, in budget that has $0 and so forth. So in summary, we have 3 additional bills to exec tomorrow that we're postponing from this afternoon to tomorrow after 459, 586, and 445. Are there any questions about that, or is everybody completely confused about what I just did? Okay. I did want to mention something because Rudy has me
That's to support.
getting used to doing this. And on last bill on 383, we had 2 in support, 0 opposed, 0 in neutral. Next, we're going to hear Bill 04, which is the preambulation bill. We have a lot of people that have signed up to testify. We have 2 that support the bill, 29 oppose the bill, 0 are neutral, and we have at least so far 8 that have been asked to testify. For those of you who are to testify, I'm going to ask you to testimony, which will help the clerk gather the folder so that the bill is complete. I'm going to ask you to hold your comments to summary comments if we're going to get through all the testimony. But we will stop between testifiers so that the committee can question you if they have questions. Are there any comments or questions from the committee on this bill? Seeing none, we can start with
Chair, I did not see Representative Harrington, at least listed as Representative Harrington. He's the chair. I'd be happy to introduce the bill so we can move on.
okay, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
And unless Christina, our researcher sees something different, I just do not see Representative Harrington. I'm stalling for time, obviously. But I do not see Representative Harrington. Chair, so please the committee, I am Representative Jim Joy, representing Rockingham. There we go. I am Representative Jim Majori, representing Northampton, Rockingham 22, House 404.
Thank you. Let's see. Zell lined up,
Yes.
and after him, David Bickford. Okay,
Jonathan Frizzell is all set.
Mr. Frizzell, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're doing fine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you to the committee. My name is Jonathan Frizzell. I live in Colebrook. I'm an attorney with offices in Colebrook, Lancaster, and Berlin. Although I'm an attorney, I'm here on my own. I'm not representing any client. I oppose HB 404. I handle court cases, including cases involving real estate disputes. In some of those cases, the judge will take what we call a view of the property as bound or the boundary line that's in dispute. The judge and the parties need definite markers on the ground as the best evidence of what the borders are. Actual markers are much more helpful and reliable than photos or computer images. Definite markers are a frame of reference that are not in dispute, and many times that takes the form of a clearly marked town line. Another example of this would be the white stone markers that DOT places on the edge of the highway right-of-way. So if I'm in court or preparing a deed or advising a town board, it helps me and my clients to have those definite markers, such as a town line that's been blazed and properly marked. Preambulation is a key part of keeping those town boundaries as one of the forms of those definite markers that we need in the legal system. That is why I oppose HB 404. I ask that it be voted inexpedient to legislate, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Bickford if he's online. Mr. Bickford, the microphone's yours.
He should be all good now.
Mr. Bickford.
He's there. I'm asking him to unmute.
It is. Okay, I'm sorry. My name is David Bickford. I'm from New Durham, where this bill initiated from. I had asked them to do their perambulation and pointed the law out to the selectmen, and they avoided it year after year. And I finally did take them to court, but I decided to drop it when the COVID came forward. They don't feel they have to do it. The budget committee said that they were not interested in doing the perambulation because they didn't feel they had to do it. And so there's this feeling out there that they don't have to do this, even though the legislature has said for many, many, many years that this needs to be done. Now, I don't dispute the fact that we may want to make it more than 7 years, but this bill comes back and says, well, whenever the selectmen feel there's a necessity. Basically, that's like a repeal. When I was a selectman, believe me, if I saw that, we wouldn't be doing it. Okay, so if the legislature wants it done at all, they should ITL the bill the way it's written. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? For Mr. Bickford? Excuse me.
No.
Seeing none. Next, we have Mr. Grays from the NHMA, and we have Mr. Stott, after that, from the New Hampshire Timberland Association.
We just have to hear Mr. Grays. Okay, all good.
Mr. Grays, you're up. Please submit your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Nate Grace from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. We are in support of HB 404. We think that it makes sense to allow local communities and their governing boards to determine when it is appropriate to perambulate. And that's really the summation of my testimony.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask a question to the person that's testifying?
The one who just spoke?
Yes.
Yes, this is a question from Representative Guthrie. Mr. Graves?
Mr. Gray, if you have any, and thank you for your testimony, do you have any information as far as the satellite imagery as to how effective that is and just what it is?
I'm not an expert in the satellite imagery, but what I would imagine, because realistically what this perambulation is trying to do is make sure that there are clear boundaries between the towns. What you would be doing with the satellite imagery is changing that to GPS coordinates, which are obviously regulated by the US government. And effectively, you'd be able to get boundary lines that are within inches. And that could be very effective. All you would need, obviously, to determine the difference between one town and another is a GPS device with some degree of accuracy. And I do know that many assessors and many tax mapping organizations, for instance, are doing GPS mapping now rather than doing, what I would call old-fashioned surveys of going from, the large rock in the corner of someone's property to the old hickory tree, as is in many deeds. I just think that the GPS-based seems to be the most modern option at the moment.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Before you start, we had a question from Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to cough louder from now on. Is the person from NHMA still there?
I am.
So, do I understand then that if you wanted to verify a point along the line, you would use a GPS device and you would still have to walk out into the woods or whatever, and the GPS device would tell you where you are, and from that you would be able to say, oh, this point is in Derry and this point is in Londonderry?
I'm not a surveyor, so I'm not exactly sure how they conduct it, but my understanding is they do field work where they go out and they map things on via GPS, and essentially they create a 3D model of the Earth, and that's what they use, although it may be smaller to scale because you're only talking about someone's property or an individual town.
Follow-up? Representative Piemonte?
I can answer your question. GPS is pretty accurate. It used to be where it'd be 15, 20 feet away or 15 yards. But now they're pretty much right on the money. They use either true north or regular north, which is it's accurate.
Yes, follow-up?
I will follow up. So what would happen in a boundary dispute? You would use these GPS coordinates that are derived from some method, and you still have to go out in the woods and verify that, once again, that at this point, everything to the left is in one town and everything to the right is in the other town. Is that correct?
I defer to Representative Piemonte. It looks like he knows more about this than I do.
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I remember testimony we had from last year, and these are markers that are out in the field or wherever, and they get overgrown after 10 years, and you would never find them even with GPS, more than likely. So the GPS will direct you to where the marker is. You have to verify the marker at that point. there are places that are marked.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Margaret. A tree we use as a marker. Now you're using the GPS coordinate.
You want to direct the question to the person on the line, or you want to say that for an executive discussion?
That's just for just executive. All right, I'll be quiet.
It's okay. You're just going to kind of question.
Well, he's already said he doesn't know.
Okay. All right. Representative Gallagher had a question.
Yes, you have experience working with satellite imagery yourself, and if so, what has that been?
I do not really have any experience with working with satellite imagery, except insofar I've answered questions about tax maps and some other legal questions along that edge.
And as a follow-up, how did the New Hampshire Municipal Association come to the determination that satellite imagery would be a suitable replacement for perambulation?
I think the goal is to try to be as accurate as possible for the town boundaries and to ensure that people know where those are. So it seems like the intent of this statute is to have boundary markers, and the obligation of the select board to go out and preambulate would be to ensure that they're there. As it appears that there's a transition in surveying to GPS use, it may make more sense to look at satellite imagery and GPS use as a modern approach to this. Again, I'm not an expert, but that would seem to be acceptable. And I'm certainly aware that where there are boundary lines disputes, it could be up to the courts to determine, what the exact boundaries are between properties, whether that's private properties or municipalities, although hopefully at this point, municipalities are aware of where their boundaries are given their longstanding existence.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Yes. This is Rich Lascelles. My question is, do other states use this procedure? And secondly, what do you do in the case of a wetland or a river or someplace that you physically cannot traverse?
So there are no exceptions within the statute about whether you can physically traverse or not. So I assume that select boards that have been required to preambulate those places have figured out some sort of option. I would imagine it would be physically impossible in some cases, but I don't know that those lands are in dispute. So I'm not sure that many people are too concerned. As far as other states, my understanding is that that Massachusetts and other states in New England, which originally had this obligation, many of them have transitioned to something similar to what this statute or this bill would be proposing, which is that preambulation as necessary is determined by the local governing body. So there wouldn't be, an obligation to it at a set point in time. But I don't believe there are many states in the union which do require preambulation.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
do I do recognize that you recognize Jason Stock, but I do see that Mr. Bickford's hand is raised. I don't know if it's in response to some questions that have been asked, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention.
Okay, I would ask Mr. Bickford to hold on. We have a few more people that would like to testify, and then we'll come back for folks who want to testify a second time. Is Mark, and pardon my attempt at your last name, Hondo Dimitraki? Is that close?
As I find them.
You see Mark on the?
I do not.
He's from the New Hampshire Land Surveyors Association. Okay, we'll come back if he's here. Next is Gerald Miller, and then we'll go to Linda Bronson after that.
Whoops. Okay, all good.
Hey, Mr. Miller, you're up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're doing fine.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for letting me speak to you today. My name is Gerald Miller. I'm a retired land surveyor currently living in Hampton, and I grew up in Francistown. I'm asking you to vote inexpedient to legislate on HB 404 before you today. I hope you have been able to review the two submissions I sent to this committee dated February 4th and 5th. That goes into more detail than we can cover today in this testimony.
Thank you for your submission.
I've had over 40 years experience as a land surveyor dealing with town lines, their perambulations, monumentations, both good and bad. The past couple of decades, I've been testifying on a number of legislative acts that seek to make RSA 51 ineffective or eliminate it completely. Once again, this proposed act, HB 404, is attempting to essentially make RSA 51 ineffective by changing sections 2 and 3. This is a really bad idea. The definition of perambulation, or to perambulate, means to make an official inspection of a boundary on foot. This is not something that is optional. It, quote, shall be perambulated, unquote. If a perambulation is not done on a regular timetable, which is currently 7 years, not, quote, as often as the selectmen determine is necessary, unquote, as House Bill 404 proposes, then the marks and bounds will ultimately, by either nature or man-made reasons, be lost forever, which has and will result in major expenses to individuals and municipalities. Also, HB 404 proposes adding to RSA 51:2, quote, in lieu of perambulation of the town lines, methods such as satellite imagery may be used, unquote. Let's break this down. In lieu of perambulation of town lines means no feet on the ground, no eyes on the bounds, no ability to describe accurately the status of the town line for section 51:4, the return of RSA 51 that is to be recorded with the Secretary of State and in the town records of both towns. Such as satellite imagery being used as an example of a method that may be used very broadly, very broad terminology, and something that is totally useless as a substitute. To my knowledge, no type of satellite imagery, whether it be photographic, LiDAR, infrared, has the ability to renew or mark bounds. I'm referring to the second task listed in RSA 51:2. In very few cases would the best government satellite imagery even be able to see marks or bounds on a town line. We are talking about a whole host of monuments of shapes and material, marked field stones, iron stakes, blazed and painted trees, piles of stones, concrete and granite posts with carved dates and initials, a stone in a stone wall on top of a ridge, a mark on a ledge outcrop. Just to list a few. Most under a dense cover of trees and sometimes covered by fallen leaves or moss. Nor would satellite imagery be able to find missing bounds that had been dropped from the perambulation returns due to lack of proper perambulations, or discover that a boundary tree called for had been destroyed due to logging, or be aware that bounds that have been dug up and moved, broken, or buried by plows in any number of construction situations. There is nothing in technology as good as, or in lieu of a proper perambulation, as feet on the ground and eyes on the bounds. It's all about carefully maintaining the bounds. That's what is important about RSA 51:2 and the 7-year perambulation intended to limit the chances of them being lost and thereby preventing encumbrances in courts. Basically, it is human nature not to do something that you don't want to do or don't think you are capable of doing, and you won't unless there is something that requires you to do by law. It is also human nature to feel guilty about it too, especially when it's your responsibility, your duty. Every time there is a change in members of this committee, another bill like this one is brought forward for your deliberation. And while I'm alive and made aware of an attack on this law, I will be there to defend it. It's that important. It is my wish, though, that I will never have to do it again. Again, I respectfully request that you vote House Bill 404 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mellon. Do we have Mark?
I believe we do.
Demitraki, is that, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, that's correct. It's Kondo Demitraki.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you very much. I'll make this brief, and thank you very much for holding the hearing and allowing us to participate. My name is Mark Kondo Demitraki. I'm speaking on behalf of the New Hampshire Land Surveyors Association. And we are opposed to this bill. We feel that perambulation is a very important aspect of determining and maintaining monumentation and town boundaries. We also believe that it is an extremely important historical preservation bill that, as you know, New Hampshire is one of the original colonial states, and there are boundary markers that date back several hundred years, which it is in our best interest to preserve. I would just like to point out several statements that Mr. Grays stated about GPS and aerial photography. There are multiple differences in technology out there. There are multiple vendors that create GPS data collection devices, and there are multiple vendors that render aerial imagery. There is no standard for the aerial imagery, and aerial imagery can have significant differences due to it not being orthorectified correctly. So you can have overlaps. GPS does not collect data very well when you have areas of heavy and dense tree cover. And so what you end up with is potential overlaps in that coordinate data, which can then create more disputes. You can already see in different versions of GIS mapping that communities have that there are overlaps in the town lines as they're rendered on their GIS mapping. A lot of this has come from different coordinate systems and the discrepancies between the use of, state plane or some other horizontal coordinate system. So the other thing that I just want to point out is that, this law states that the towns must perambulate their boundaries to preserve them, but it does not say that the selectmen themselves have to do it. The selectmen and the town fathers have the opportunity to delegate this to different civic organizations, and there are certainly many civic organizations that would be more than willing, to perform these tasks on a regular basis, such as the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, or other organizations. So it is not something that the selectmen themselves are required to do. And really, I think until the legislature creates a specific standard that everyone must follow for both aerial photography and GPS data collection, there is the opportunity for there to be differences in that data that is collected and presented. And then the question will become, who is correct and what information you hold? And I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, let me move to, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you're not a lawyer, but what is the legal definition of a boundary? Is it the marker?
So I'm not an attorney. So a boundary can come in many shapes and forms. It can be a natural monument, such as a river, a ridge of a mountain, some other form, a lake, etc. It could be a stone wall or a stone monument that was set by someone. It could be any kind of iron pipe or rebar or any myriad of items that could have been set in the ground that was determined by the parties to be that property corner or boundary. So monumentation comes in all different shapes and sizes.
Follow-up?
Follow-up, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So since you're not a lawyer, would it be your opinion that the GPS coordinates would be used to assist you in finding where the boundaries are?
Certainly GPS coordinates are helpful in assisting in finding where those boundaries are if they have already been established, by a specific, GPS coordinate. The issue would then become that potentially the GPS system I'm using may be a little bit different than a GPS system that someone else is using, which would certainly be different than a GPS that is collected, say, on someone's iPhone or Samsung phone, because again, that would be a different wave that the device is reading, which would give a different coordinate and a different view. So physically perambulating and finding those monuments is very important. Certainly the GPS is going to get you close, but preserving that monumentation is extremely important, and not relying specifically on that one aspect of the GPS until there is a specific standard for that data collection, I think would call into question if a monument was ever moved or changed or shifted where that exact location should be.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from, I'm sorry, we have a hand up from Representative Davis. Still on mute, though.
I'm asked her to unmute.
Thank you. My apologies. Thank you for taking my question. Concerning differences in GPS systems, I am not a professional by any stretch of the imagination, but I am on the planning board here in Lebanon, and we use the New Hampshire state plane coordinates. Isn't that a statewide system where everything agrees with everything else, and therefore there is no concern that there are differing systems with differing measurements?
In theory, yes. In theory, everything should be the same. But unfortunately, when you're interjecting humans into that equation, you're always going to have some margin of error. And it could be due to the setup of the equipment. Perhaps someone set equipment up differently, or there was an error in setting up the equipment, or there was different equipment that was used. There could be calibration issues in measurement devices for setting up that equipment. So there's always opportunities to inject error into information and reading. Now, the wave itself that comes from the satellite won't change, but the way that potentially someone sets the equipment up to accept that information could.
May I have a follow-up question, please?
Yes, go right ahead.
So thank you for that answer. And just to, I hope you don't consider this flippant, but I'll ask anyway. When you say injecting human action into the process, isn't perambulation the most human action process that there is? And how is it that physical human perambulation has none of the faults that the GPS system has?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And what I want to point out is the point of perambulation is to locate and uncover existing monumentation. And again, that's why as surveyors, we specifically set and locate specific monumentation on the ground so that there is no question that that point where that monument is the delineation of that corner or line, etc. So the perambulation of going out and maintaining and finding this monumentation then obviously would support the use and collection of GPS, but to rely solely on the aerial photography and the GPS data and allow these historical monuments to deteriorate or be lost would then create other issues and problems that occur when, once again, the data that is collected is questioned or there is an issue that's found with that data. So really the importance of perambulation is maintaining a historical marker of significance for the state and its history. And your question certainly has great merit, and the answer lies in the actual physical upkeep of these monuments.
Thank you for that testimony. Next, we'll hear from, if she's on the line, Linda Bronson, and then Tom Christensen after that. Ms. Bronson, you're up.
Yes.
You may need to unmute though.
Ask again if.
Ms. Bronson, we can't hear you.
Okay, I got it now. I couldn't figure out how to do it because my picture's not up. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're doing fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chairman Dolan and committee members for allowing me the time to testify in regards to House Bill 404. I am a resident in Wentworth, New Hampshire, Grafton County. Along with my husband, we manage 200 acres of mixed hardwoods and conifers. Our land is divided nearly 50-50 between the towns of Wentworth and Orford. Interest in this subject matter stems from management needs to have these town boundaries clearly marked and maintained. For this reason, I oppose House Bill 404. My forest management plan calls for periodic sustainable harvesting and the creation of wildlife habitat. For this reason, we perform patch cuts and timber stand improvement in a somewhat rotating fashion. As all 4 parcels of this contiguous property are divided by the town line, it is imperative that I know exactly where the line stands for intent to cut purposes and to assess the timber yield tax. A couple years ago, Wentworth and Orford were conducting the perambulation of the line going through my property, and they came to a halt with their orange paint at the edge of a large opening, not seeing any more marked trees to follow because we had did a patch cut there. Helping them out, we carefully reconstructed the markers through that cut area on stumps and rock piles to join the existing line, enabling future maintenance of the boundary line. This was possible because of well-maintained border lines on both sides of this area. Satellite imagery would not have picked up this imaginary line. The on-the-ground maintenance of the town boundary lines can also provide an opportunity for those markers to be on the lookout for possible current use transgressions, for example, as well as just becoming familiar with changes in the land. My impression in talking with these fellows is they actually enjoyed the work. They enjoyed meeting the landowners and they just enjoyed being out in the woods. Last fall, another example, last fall, my husband and I decided to build a cabin for guests on one of our parcels of land divided by the two towns. The portion of the forested land situated in the town of Orford happens to be deed restricted and cannot be built on. We were easily able to determine the exact line based on the town markings to ensure that these restrictions were not violated and the cabin was built in the town of Wentworth. Recently, we placed a conservation easement on a large segment of our land, and it was critical to know the exact acreage and location of the contiguous parcels per the agreement. Because it is 85% forested, satellite images, aerial photos, or remote sensing would not have been able to place these lines. Satellite imagery is a great technology, but it has its limitations. And the images are only as good as their resolution. But even high resolution images need to be validated on the ground to ensure the trustworthiness of the interpretation. Imaginary lines don't show up on remotely sensed images. For boundary lines in a forest especially, ground truthing has to be conducted. These are all examples demonstrating the importance of perambulating town lines. Our state is 82% or so forested. Forest landowners and the forest product industry manage best when sound forest management plans are in place. Accurate and well-marked boundary lines on the ground is foundational for the management of our land, as well as an imperative for settling boundary disputes. Good fences make good neighbors, as the saying goes. Towns have an important responsibility by accurately representing these boundaries. Let them not relinquish this important responsibility. I oppose House Bill 404 and request that you vote 404 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you so much for your service to the state and for the opportunity to testify. I would happily entertain any questions.
Are there questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Etchiori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question, Ms. Brownson. Each time one of these situations has come up on your property, has somebody had to go out and identify the boundaries, and has that happened multiple times for the same boundary?
Well, it's usually me who go out because I know exactly where the boundaries are, and also because our towns, Wentworth and Orford, do a very good job of maintaining these boundaries every 7 years. Not only do they do it with that frequency, but they do it well. You know, they use paint that's not going to wash off, and they don't do it right after a rain, and so it's usually easy to see.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, next, I think our last speaker is Tom Christensen. Is he on the line? Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Christensen, the microphone is yours. Go right ahead.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am speaking in opposition to House Bill 404 for many of the reasons that have already been explained by many of your guests. I'll give you an example. We own a 900-acre tree farm in the town of Lineborough, which happens to border the town of Temple and the town of Greenfield. And it is on the west slope of North Pack Monadnock. And our immediate abutter to the west on the mountain is the Wapak National Wildlife Refuge. Now, if you look at a Google map online right today, you'll see that the town boundaries are completely wrong, okay? I don't know where they get the boundaries from. Maybe it's GPS, it's some other source, but they are wrong. Not only are they wrong, the USGS is also wrong, and the Peterborough quadrangle has been wrong for many years. So what do we have left to rely on? Well, we have left to rely on surveyors on the ground, either a survey or the monuments that have been established long ago by the town fathers where the boundaries are. So come to find out, there's been a marked stone in the 1800s at one corner between Temple, Greenfield, and Lineborough. That's one corner. I'm just speaking of our property. There's over 30 boundaries of straight lines in the town of Lineborough. And the northwest boundary is between us and Greenfield and the Wapak National Wildlife Refuge. So I would, and as a result, we had a survey done which confirmed that the boundaries which were set long ago by the town fathers, and they conducted a review of all the boundaries on our property and a perambulation, but they appointed a committee, both Greenfield and Lineborough appointed a committee to go out and find out where the heck these boundaries are. I don't know how long it had been since they did it the last time, but they went out and sure enough, they found the stones, they found the walls, they found the markers. So, and that agreed with the survey. And so then everybody knew exactly where their land was, okay? It required on the ground survey. If you do a GPS aerial photography, it's all spruce covered. You can't tell what's on the ground. There's no visibility of it. So you have to have either a surveyor or somebody working for the town perambulating it to identify it on the ground. And that's why I'm opposed to this bill. And I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you. I would entertain any questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christensen. Is there any questions for this witness? I see no questions. Is Jason Stock available?
I am. Can you hear me?
Right ahead, Jason.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be brief. I don't want to replow the ground that you've already heard. For the record, my name's Jason Stock. I'm the executive director of the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association, and our members own and manage over 1 million acres of timberland in the state of New Hampshire. And as you've heard today, boundaries and property lines and understanding where those boundaries are on the ground is critical. It's critical for taxes. It's critical for knowing the extent of your property, easements, even rights of ways. So, again, we are opposed to House Bill 404 for all the reasons that you have heard today, and I would be happy to try and answer any questions, and I appreciate your patience. For us, this is a big and important issue. It's perambulation is important, and we appreciate you taking the time to hear our testimony, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Stock? Seeing none, and the fact that way over time, I think we're going to end the hearing at this point. I know there may be some people that want to testify a second time, but I think we've gotten plenty of testimony on this HB 404. So I'm going to conclude the hearing on HB 404. The committee, you remember I mentioned earlier that we'll be postponing some of the last bills for executive session this afternoon till tomorrow afternoon. So if you have the afternoon off, and I would ask you to be careful tomorrow with the snow, and stay healthy, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Be well, Mr. Chairman.
Safe travels back today.